Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending where in the world you're tuning in from. And welcome to the 5th day of the online forum on modern direct democracy. This morning, we'll be starting with the first session on the issues, backgrounds, and role of the public media on the September 27th popular voting day in Switzerland. And before I hand it over to the moderator, Bruno, just a few technical points. This is a participatory forum, so we really invite you to put any comments in the chat or any questions. You can use the chat function that should be at the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, or you can also, under the participants list, also on the right-hand side, you can virtually raise your hand in Zoom. So we'll be monitoring the chat room and anybody who has their hand up, and this is how we'll be collecting your questions and comments. Just also as a side note, we are now live on YouTube and recording. So if you don't want your face to be shown, if you don't want video on, then please do turn that off and change your name as well. We don't tolerate any hate speech or discriminatory comments in the chat, so please do keep that in mind. So that's it for now, and I'll be taking care of all technical things. If you have an issue, feel free to use the chat also to communicate with me. So I'll hand it over to our moderator for now. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Here is Bruno Kaufmann in Bern. I'm the co-president of the Global Forum on Modern Direct Democracy, and I'm very happy that we now, for the first time this week, can have a session on the practice of direct democracy in Switzerland. In fact, this week is a very interesting week in Switzerland because it's just about to be a voting day on Sunday about 5 very interesting issues we will talk about, but also it's a week where the parliament meets here in Bern. So there are a lot of discussions, a lot of tensions, a lot of really interesting developments we can follow here. We started on Monday morning with a session on the procedures and practices of modern direct democracy, and had then on Tuesday a session on the international dimensions of democracy and direct democracy with a diplomat from Switzerland. And yesterday we had the session from the Prison Turned Democracy Center, the Käfigturm, where we discussed the democracy city. All these issues will also be issues next spring at the 2021 Global Forum. And now during this online forum, we have really the opportunity to learn more about this practice and also to see how different elements are working together when it comes to using initiative and referendum. And of course, one very important issue is the media, how the media is dealing with it. And of course, it's always also about how well prepared people are to make these important decisions. As I have said, this weekend, there will be 5 issues on the ballot, which we will get presented initially from one of the colleagues here at Swissinfo, Urs Geiser, who has been a journalist with Swissinfo for many years and have covered these developments in a very interesting way in different languages for many years. We will then also get more of a background on how the direct democracy processes and the voting is developed in Switzerland from another colleague, Renat Künzi, who is also one of the democracy journalists. And then finally, we will go into a little bit more the role of public media in such a vibrant, vivid democracy with the editor-in-chief at Swissinfo, Larissa Bieler. So we will get a lot of opportunities to discuss both the issues, the reporting about it, but also the role of public media. So I welcome you to this session very much. And also, as you now know, you can always, if there are any question marks, anything, you can put them on the chat and I will try to consider them for the discussion, so the questions will be forwarded. So let's go into the issue. Let's go into what's coming up now on Sunday, and I will give the floor to Urs. You're welcome.
Thank you, Bruno. Welcome, America. Welcome, Europe, Africa, and Asia. I'm happy to share with you a few notes about the 5 issues that come to a nationwide vote in Switzerland on Sunday. And let me start with a preliminary remark. Some people, like people living in the city of Zurich, they will have to vote on not only 5 issues, but 13. People living in Geneva, for instance, they vote on, if I'm not mistaken, 10 issues at least. I myself, I'm living outside Bern. I have 7 things to consider, 5 of which are nationwide votes. Now, let's go to those one after the other. I'll try and share my screen with you. Just a second. This is the first issue, arguably the most important from a possibly international point of view. The Swiss vote once again about their relations, the government's relations with the European Union. This is because one party, the right-wing Swiss People's Party, wants Switzerland to do away, to scrap the free immigration from the EU. This is the so-called Labour Accord with the European Union, restricting immigration. It's by far not the first time the Swiss vote on this. We've had at least 12 votes, if I'm not mistaken, since the 1990s, and it won't be the last time the Swiss vote on it either, because it's very, very likely that already next year there will be another ballot about the issue. We have once again the People's Party taking on all the other political parties in Switzerland, Parliament, the government, the business community, the trade unions, and civil society. The promoters of the initiative say it's about time Switzerland takes immigration issues in its own hands without interference by the EU. For the government and the opponents of this initiative, it's primarily economic concerns which make them say go and say no to the initiative, because Switzerland's prosperity, Switzerland's economic relations, Switzerland's relations with the EU as such are in danger to a certain extent. And then I think we're already done with the first issue. We'll go to the second one, which is a defense issue. First one, we had a foreign policy issue. This one is about whether the Swiss army should get new fighter jets for its air force. Again, not the first time the Swiss vote on it. Here, it's all about a 6 billion credit to buy these fighter jets. The idea to have a vote on this came from left-wing political parties and pacifists, because Parliament approved the purchase of the jets, and the left-wing and the pacifists, they forced a vote on it. Again, maybe quickly, why those against the purchase are against it. It's because they think it's a luxury solution. It costs too much. It's no good at this stage. It's not necessary. The government, for its part, thinks Switzerland without a credible air force could no longer defend the country. And we're already done with the second one. We come to a family issue. Should Switzerland introduce a 10-day paternity leave? Finally, Switzerland is way, way back in a European comparison when it comes to paternity leave as such. This paternity leave bill was approved by Parliament, but this time round it were right-wing groups or centre-right groups, small businesses, representatives of a small business association, which don't like the idea of a paternity leave, and therefore started to collect the necessary signatures for a nationwide vote. Proponents, supporters of the paternity leave, they argue it's about time Switzerland boosts its social security system with paternity leave. Switzerland, by the way, which only introduced maternity leave 15 years ago. Maternity leave for 14 weeks, paternity leave would be 2 weeks. Interesting background story there is the 2 weeks paternity leave is in a way a compromise, because a group, a trade union group initially wanted and asked for a 4-week paternity leave. That idea came back to Parliament. Parliament got cold feet in a way and came up with its own solution for the 2-week paternity leave, because they feared, oh, if the initiative goes through, we might end up with a 4-week leave for fathers of newborn children. Yep. And then let's go to another family issue. It's actually a family stroke tax issue. It's a bit of a complicated one. The idea being families with children should get tax breaks, a certain amount. I won't go into too much detail about it. It's raising the general deduction from 10,000 to 25,000. The bill, which again was approved in Parliament and was then challenged to a vote, initially had another purpose, and that purpose was to give money to people who sent their children to a creche, basically for external child care. Yes, I think that's it from this. It's a complicated one. It's not really sure. It's very easy to understand, even for Swiss voters, what it's all about and what is at stake. Now we're already done. I'll take you to the third one, which hang on, is this one. This is again a referendum, i.e. a bill that was approved by Parliament and is now challenged to a nationwide vote. There it's all about wolves, in wildlife wolves. Actually, the bill is about protecting wildlife and alpine farming, but the focus is very much on the growing wolf population in Switzerland. The battle lines are not as clear as they are with the other bills, but here we have maybe basically, I'm generalizing very much, an urban population versus a population living in rural areas, or you can say a population in rural areas against environmentalist nature conservation circles. The government is for the bill, as is Parliament, and environmentalists are forcing a vote now. And that's basically it. I've taken you through the 5 nationwide votes. I hope it wasn't too much information at once. Otherwise, you can always ask questions afterwards. I hand back to you, Bruno.
Thank you very much, Urs, for this overview. And as you have said, there are basically, there's one initiative about limiting free movement. There are 3 referendums about hunting, about tax break, and also about the air fighters. And there is one indirect proposal from the government to an initiative about the paternity leave. Maybe a question to yours about, I mean, how hot are these issues? Will there be surprises? Do we expect like very narrow races, or is everything already quite clear?
I suppose it depends on your point of view, which one is the most controversial issue. I think they all in the media had their little run, so to speak. There were days or weeks when the papers were full of one issue. For me, and with an international perspective, I reckon the foreign policy issue, the immigration, is probably top of the list. Now, when it comes to speculating about results, journalists are notoriously bad about getting the results right beforehand, because we don't have that famous crystal ball where we can see what's happening in the future. Cheap excuse, isn't it? I think pollsters told us quite clearly that it might be a fairly clear-cut case, a fairly clear-cut race. The immigration vote will most likely be rejected, i.e. a victory for the government and parliament, and a defeat for the right-wing People's Party. The fighter jets will most likely get through. The paternity leave will most likely get through. The race is a bit more open when it comes to the tax issue on childcare, and the fourth issue, the wolf. Wildlife, it's too close to call, is the simple answer.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Frank Kahlberg. Frank, please.
Yes, hello. So I'm curious about how a referendum is formulated. Who does the writing, and how does the writing process work?
Thank you for the question. I'm not quite sure I can answer it though. A committee which challenges a parliamentary decision, I suppose it has to write the referendum, the text for the referendum, which will then be submitted to the authorities which have to approve it. Bruno, you might be able to fill us in on that. I think you know quite a bit more than I do.
Yes, I mean, this is really an important issue because it's about who formulates also the question. But the important thing is, as I showed in the beginning, this booklet, it's the voter pamphlet. In Switzerland, we call it Abstimmungsbüchlein. It's really the place where all the information is given, which legal text you vote on, because every time you vote on something, it's not like you wish to do that or that, but do you say yes or no to a legal text? And when it is an initiative, the citizen initiative group, with the help of the authorities, formulate it. And it's important also to know that the text must be identical in all 4 national languages. So you need a lot of help to make it truly understandable. And also when it comes to legal text from Parliament, this is already from the beginning an issue, because maybe this text will be put to a national vote. So it must be very clearly written. And this is also a work together of Parliament and a group in the public offices who help you. So language is very crucial, but it's important to know that the question is always about a legal text. I hope this may answer your question, Frank. Yeah. So is there any more question at this point? Yes, thank you, Frank. I think we can go a little bit deeper out of this discussion about the vote on Sunday to the, let's say, a record and history and series of votes, because every time you have a vote, it's a vote which is not the first time normally you vote about it, but a series of votes to fine-tune. And I would like to give the floor to our colleague Renat Künzi, who is here at Swissinfo, also dealing with democracy issues since many years. And he will give us a little bit of an overview about how this works and how this series looks like. Renat?
Thank you, Bruno. Also from me, hello to everybody. Nice to have you here together. And thanks for your interest on the very, very interesting direct democracy in Switzerland. First, I can maybe open a short window. In the beginning, Bruno mentioned some really hot things that were happening this week. It started, in fact, in the night from Sunday to Monday, when the youth protesters for climate protection, they put a camp just in front of the Federal Palace. And inside there was the session of the parliament. Outside there was the protest camp of the young people. So it was quite hot. They after almost 3 days, they left. They had to leave because there is a regulation that during a parliamentary session there isn't political action allowed just in front of the Parliament House. So this was a quite hot thing. And another short information. I was attending a conference of EasyVote. This is an independent organization in Switzerland who is committed to promote political interest within the young people. And there were some very interesting proposals, because we have this gap that there is a strong action in the streets, and as I mentioned, but the young generation, the so-called Generation Z, doesn't take part in the ballots in the classical channels of direct democracy. So how to fill this gap? There were some very interesting proposals. Just mentioned one or two. That the young generation, the sub 25 agers, should have a fixed place in all the committees and everywhere where there are political decisions taken. They should be installed, not for 4 years, but for the debate of a certain issue like the climate protection. So, and another proposal was to have quotas in all parliaments, not only the national 2 chambers, but in every canton, in every cantonal parliament. The young generation should have 30% of the seats. So this, I think this is a very interesting debate, and I think Switzerland is not the only country who people really try to bring the young generation into the democracy structures. So this was just a short window to what was happening this week. As Bruno mentioned, the ballots decisions about the relationship between Swiss and foreigners. This is really one of the big narratives of Swiss direct democracy. Since World War II, we had a total of 508 ballots, and 43 of them concerned really were pointed at the relationship, the Swiss and the foreigners. So this gives you an idea how this is really for us, it's a usual thing. And maybe I can start with the year 1970. There was a really tough one. This was really a tough one. There was an extremist guy who was very smart, a very good speaker, and he made a proposal that in every canton there should be only 10% of foreigners. So and the others they have to leave. And in that time, it was in the booming 60s, Switzerland. You know, the really the good infrastructure projects were built up in these years, and it was mostly done by Italian workers then from Portugal, Spain, Turkey, and former Yugoslavia, and really a massive help from them. And he wanted to cut it down. And in the ballot, he got 46%, almost a majority, and this was a shock. This was an absolute shock, and country was divided, and it was one of the toughest moments in direct democracy of Switzerland during peacetime. And what happened then? He continued his way, but with every attempt, he failed. It was a fail, and then he disappeared. But the issue, it didn't disappear. But the Swiss People Party, they took up the issue, and now from the 1990s. They put it on top of their agenda, and it was the beginning of the rise of this right-wing party to #1. It's up to this day. The People's Party is the strongest party in Switzerland, and they still, as this the ballot about to abolish the free movement of people between Switzerland and the European Union. It's still, you know, the same narrative, and but we also have to say that since 2014, it was their last victory with the People's Initiative, and since then they lost 7 times. And the predictions, it's probably they will lose again. So this is kind of end of the cycle, at least for the moment. And what does this mean? You know, this issue, these fears, constant fears of people in Switzerland, of the Swiss citizens from foreigners. What does this mean? This and connected to direct democracy, and I think this is one of the big differences between Switzerland and other countries. Direct democracy makes possible that these fears are real. This is not made by a creator. They are here. They are inside the people. And as I said, almost in 1970, almost 50% of the people, they were ready to throw out between 300 and 400,000 Italians out of the country. And but these fears in the deliberation, in the public debates, and then it gets the People's Initiative. It comes to Parliament, and then it comes out again, and then finally after 3 or 2 or 3 or 4 years, it comes to the ballot. So in this whole processes, in this duration of time, in this where a lot of different time parts and with different actors are in the end, these fears are structured, and then with the decision at the ballot, we have a decision. Not everybody likes it, but as we show, we can take up the issue again, and after the People's Party, after now 7 years, they come again with the same issue, and this makes we have this. Switzerland, we have this, these fears, we have this right-wing policy, we have this populist party, we have it, but it's not because the People's Party is only one of several parties, and they are not alone. So, and the parliament finds a way to implement the text of a people's initiative, and in the end, the fears are, they're a bit cooled down, and I think in opposite to countries like Germany or France, with also a lot of people who are, really concerned about foreigners, refugees, and so. Where extremist parties can benefit, that there is no structured debate on these issues, on these fears, and here we have the possibility in this way that there is a party speaking for all these people, and give them a say, and represents them, and they are taken seriously. They have a kind of a home, a political home. So this is another way, a different way to deal with these fears, and so I think if you have questions maybe on that point, that would be interesting, or on other points, we can already make a short stop here, and then I come to the other ballot.
Yes, thank you, Renat. There was a question about to what extent do students and teachers in Switzerland talk about referendums and democracy in general? Can you say something about that, about education in schools, about these issues?
Yes, this might be a surprising fact that there are no official courses on schools about political education. There is a kind of Staatskunde. I don't know what's the word in English, but this is more institutional, more and this is also one of the big debates in Switzerland, how to really to improve the political education. So to give you a short answer, it's up to the people, it's up to the teachers how they usually do, or a lot they really discuss, maybe not every ballot, not that was presented, but the ballot to abolish the free movement of people, to discuss this issue with the pupils and the students. This is done, and when I went to school, we regularly discussed about these issues, but it's depending on the initiative and the interest of the teachers and the professors at the universities.
Very good. So you have some more background to the other issues?
Yes, the jet fighters, as Urs mentioned, the budget for this 6 billion Swiss francs, and it's a bit the same thing. This is also a kind of a narrative in Swiss direct democracy. Since the late 1970s, there have been 24 votes on issues concerning national defense, and I was writing, if I can share the, I was writing a piece that showed a bit this historical dimension in the issues of the national defense, votes about national defense, these 24 votes. And this is the vote of Sunday. It's very typical. Since some years, it's impossible. It's impossible to that Switzerland, the Swiss Air Force, would buy new fighter jets without Swiss citizens having a say about this. This is something new, and it has a lot to do with a vote in 1989. And Bruno was involved there. I don't elaborate on that further, but it was the People's Initiative to abolish the Swiss Army, Stop Swiss Army. And this was this was also very interesting because everybody was concerned, and everybody, even the kids of 12 or 13 that couldn't vote at that time, they were for or against. It was really a kind of a movement of activation of a whole generation. I think this is really one of the main ballots in the history of Swiss direct democracy. I think one of the most important. And what happened there? Of course, it was rejected, but more than 35%, I guess, almost 36. That is more than a third of the Swiss voters adopted. They voted yes, and this was, of course, it was a defeat, but it was also kind of a shock because the political establishment, they thought yes, maybe they would get something between 20 and something percent, and it was more than a third, and it was a defeat, but it opened the door to a series of reforms of the Swiss Army, the civil service, and it had really big consequences. The army, the position of the Swiss Army within the people in Switzerland, it has changed. And it was before 1989 and it's after 90. So it was before a Swiss Army was something really holy, and now it got something quite normal, and it has been cut in several steps, and as a consequence of this ballot. So also to finish, this is a very good example to show you that from the 1970s, the end of the 1970s, Swiss citizens started to enhance their influence on the political field of national defense. And now and probably this is not within the interest of the government or of the parliament, but as I said, now it's for the army. It's impossible to buy, fighter jets for such a big amount of money without asking the people and letting have a say to the Swiss citizens. So also here, if you have questions, you're welcome.
Thank you, Renat. I think the interesting thing with these two lines of voting, as you described, one on Europe and free movement and foreigners on one side, and on the other side, the issue on national security, are very often the subject for a vote in Switzerland, but at the same time, internationally seen, Europe is an issue where most Europeans have an experience in being also invited to vote on EU membership or an EU treaty. That's something which is in Europe very common, while on national security, that's a very seldom case that the people are involved. And you have described there have been 24 different times people already have voted on national security. So it's a very interesting double face of Swiss democracy. And we have a question now from Gesa Destiny. You're welcome, Gesa.
Yeah, sorry, I just unmuted myself. It is what I wrote in the chat box, that how does the budget, the national or federal budget, is accommodating whether or not you spend 6 billion or not on fighter jets? How is the procedure? Is it kind of allocated in the next budget if the decision is yes?
I will repeat this question. Gesa is asking, how is it possible for a budget process that you don't know if the 6 billion will be part of it or not in this short term?
Sorry, I have a signal tone on my...
Yeah, but you hear the question from me. Just, have you understood my question, the question? Okay, Urs, maybe you have an answer.
Sorry, I have some.
I can try and possibly help out, but I don't really know the details. So apologies. I think the 6 billion are set aside from the national budget process, but really, I don't know that much more about it. Sorry, Gesa.
Yes.
Maybe I can. Yeah, no, I'm. I had a temporary, a very high tune on my. Was very inconvenient, but now everything is good again. I think this was a decision by the government that they said that the Swiss people they have to vote on these 6 billions. But they have no say about choice which type of fighter jet Swiss Army and Switzerland will buy. So normally we don't vote about budget issues. This is the parliament that is clearing the budget.
Very good. Then we have a question from Mark from Meer Democracy in Belgium. Mark?
Okay, my question is also a statement. So my question is, how is it written there? You do understand what I say? Hello?
Yes, we understand what you say, but you are welcome to put forward your question.
Yes, but my question was, more a statement than a question.
Okay, I see you have put it in the chat, but
yes,
I mean, but you could formulate it orally if you want.
Yeah. Yes, my impression is that the possibility to initiate referenda, the sense of responsibility and the sharpens the sense of responsibility and keeps the citizens awake about the social and political situation.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I mean...
And contrary to, for instance, Belgium, where the people is very apathetic to politics because they have no influence.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think it's a good comment and certainly a true comment. Maybe then I give the question floor also to Rosalind Fuller. You're welcome.
Hi, thanks. So my question is, to what extent are political parties involved in beginning campaigns for referendums are involved in actually conducting those campaigns for or against a decision?
It depends. We have parties that are launching people's initiatives or referendums. Of course, this is they are not excluded. It's people's initiatives and referendums are called people's rights, but it's not. It's possible that a party, like in the case that we presented to the People's Party, that launched an initiative to abolish the free movement of people within Europe, between Switzerland and Europe, and we have people's initiatives that are launched by one person. They collect signatures within a small group, and you know, this is a private project and a project of a party. So this both is possible, but we can say on the timeline that from some decades ago, parties discovered the instrument, or some parties discovered the instrument of people's rights. For example, the People's Initiative was mainly the main instrument for the Social Democrats to put, you know, social political issues on the political agenda. So because they had no majorities, no chance to really to influence the legal process. So for the left-wing side in parties in Switzerland and the unions, this was very, or still is very, very important.
Thank you very much. And I think it's a time now to go a little bit from the issues and the discussion about the issues which will come up and which happened, to the bigger question about how we as journalists for public service media, and how public service media in Switzerland is dealing with this kind of continuous involvement of the people, being both an information source, but also in a way an infrastructure for direct democracy. And I would like to give the word to Larissa Bieler. She is the editor-in-chief and the director of Swissinfo, which is the international service of the Swiss Broadcasting Company. Larissa.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you very much, Bruno, again for invitation, and welcome everybody to my speech. So without journalism, no democracy. So I'm very pleased to speak about the persisting role of service public media in Switzerland. I will just try to share my screen. Voila. I hope you can see it. Mm-hmm. So I will talk first about, give you an information about the Swiss media landscape, about usage habits, about media habits in Switzerland. Then, of course, I'll talk on have a look on the challenges we have at the moment, as I think a lot of European media and in other regions has as well, and conclude with then the role on the service public media. So, as you know, we have a federalistic structure in Switzerland, and 26 cantons, and this federalistic structures enables a great diversity of media. What you see here, what you can see here, these are the public service media in Switzerland. It's mainly the Swiss, the SBC, the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, which has 5 units. You see RTS, the red ones, SRF, German-speaking, RTR, the Roman-speaking, RSI, the Italian one, and Swissinfo, the international platform in 10 languages for people living abroad, interested in Switzerland. So Swiss media market is very small and highly fragmented, subdivided into quite a large German media market, a smaller French one in the West, as well as a very small Italian language in the market in the south of the country. The Federal Council, I mean, these are not all Swiss media. We have a lot of private media as well, but the Federal Council has a legal right to issue licenses to the public broadcaster, the SRG, SBC, and to provide it with funding from license fee resources, produce radio and television programs mainly. So public service and license fee are inseparable, and SRG, the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, is entrusted with a special mandate to provide, as you can see here, all linguistic regions with programs of equal quality and on a public service basis. But we also this license fee is also is also given to, I think, around 30 to 40 private TV stations and radio stations all over Switzerland. So the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, with its 5 units and around 6,600 journalists working for, is occasionally under political pressure and under pressure from private publishers, as in all European countries. And this is, for example, why the SBC has certain limitations what it can publish online. So, for example, the SBC is restricted on the internet. Articles on the internet must have a link to audio and video, and if they do not have it, they are restricted. They cannot be longer than 1,000 characters. I think that's something very interesting as well about the Swiss public service media. So for the distribution of funds, we have like a kind of a system of financial compensation. So the financing is balanced. We transfer money from the largest linguistic region, the German-speaking region, to the smaller ones. So it would be nearly impossible to set up and maintain television programs in all linguistic parts of Switzerland. So what do the households and the companies pay for service public media a year? This is every household pays 365 francs a year. From 2021 on, it will be reduced to 335 Swiss francs. So you can see this is a constant discussion and debate on how much Swiss households has to pay for Swiss public media. The revenue from the fees is around 1 billion annually. And not only, I think a part of this fee is also given to the news agency SDA. The SBC gets 1.25 billion of this whole amount of these fees. So, I mean, we have to change, and we have the same developments as everywhere, the difficult developments. So we are challenged by our transformation, digitalization, and at the same time, the advertising revenues, they fall drastically. So press titles in Switzerland, they earned 1,950 million francs from advertising in 2009. Compared with just 920 million 10 years later. So the Swiss media industry has lost 1 billion in advertising revenue over the last 10 years, which I think, which says a lot, practically everything on the nature of the ongoing media crisis. Who are the winners? The winners are Facebook and Google. They offer precise targeting and the largest available pool of customer data, which is crucial. According to estimates of advertising experts, they account for so Facebook, Google account for up to 70% of online advertising in Switzerland. The rest is still sent to media groups such as Takes Group via platforms where mainly cars are sold or jobs are placed. However, because they have a separate accounting, that's their argument, often of the private media, the profits are hardly reinvested in journalism. Also, the SBC is in a very difficult role. In the last 3 years, they lost 100 million in advertising revenues, and for the next 3 years, it will be also around 50 million. And so also we are fighting quite hard. This is an interesting slide. You see, right, the 65 public service media in Europe. You see a comparison of the revenues, and you see, right, the top 10 internet giants. So this is a good slide to show when we have inner conflicts and fights in Switzerland between private media and the SBC. Then, I mean, basically this slide shows where the real concurrents are. So we should stop fighting each other probably and make more cooperation. So journalism has become a loss-making business. Only very few media houses in Switzerland, in Europe, still make money from journalism. So the problem is at the meantime, the public media in many countries as well, countries are to be downsized, even if for all the advantages and disadvantages they have, they provide high quality for a broad public, so for everyone, and that's very important. I would like to have a quick look on a very interesting vote we had at the 4th of March in 2018, the so-called No Billag vote. Why Billag? Billag was the agency which is collecting the license fees. Now today it's called Serafe, but then it was Billag and everybody knows it. And so this was the No Billag vote in 2018. And this initiative was calling for abolition of radio and TV license fee. So basically, if it would have been a yes, then there was no plan B for service public media in Switzerland anymore. This was interesting for several reasons, not only for a huge media interest. Maybe you have heard it, almost 4,000 articles were also published abroad. But during this campaign, you see we had 10,000 print articles, 65 articles per day, a lot of social media interaction as well. So it was a really very intense and long voting campaign, but accompanied by this incredible strong media response. So everybody was a bit surprised about that as well, because this was an initiative coming from a very right wing, and no one really took it serious. And the initiative went through all the parliamentary procedures. So Federal Council, National Council, Council of States, they all voted against it by a large majority. And then it got very interesting in the middle of the campaign, because shortly after Christmas in 2017, the newspapers published 20 minutes. This is a free newspaper, another survey on the No Billag initiative, and the result was there 51% would vote yes. And then it got very interesting what happened then. So this was a turning point in the whole campaign as well. The SBC has to think about their communication and everything, and then they changed. But what was changing? More than 200 or around 290 organizations, civil organizations, stood up and interacted in this campaign, from culture, from but not only musicians, but also, how do you say, Sinnesbehinderte, blind people. And because, because there we really saw what service public media are. They're there for really everyone, and they are very anchored in the society, and they're very important for the cohesion for the society. So this was an interesting phenomena, and with the support of all these organizations, it was possible then to reject this initiative. It was rejected by 71%. And the survey directly after the vote showed that role of service public media in particular as a neutral guarantor of diversity of opinion is very much appreciated and important for voters in the Swiss media system. And for us, it was important to see that market success alone does not legitimize our existence. So people must identify with their media. So here you can have a look, because this is important on the changing media habits in Switzerland, because if media cannot follow up with these changes, and it costs a lot, this digitalization, then democracy has a problem, because the Swiss media, the media, public service media, but all the media, they are not there anymore where people are and where people consume. And as you can see here, what's interesting, but I think common for everywhere, social media is rising, and online media consumption as well is rising, and everybody else is all the other graphs are decreasing. I stay here for a moment, and just to summarize, what are the challenges on the horizon for the public service media? And when I say public service media, I mean we are here we do sports and we do entertainment, but we mainly do information. And we have, from the concession, from the mandate we have to invest half of our budget, which means 600 million a year in information journalism. But we can cover and do whatever we want, but if we can't cope with the challenges we have, the most important is to reach young targets, young people, and above all to take them seriously. In Switzerland today, this is a study from 2019, says over 1/3 of the population is judged to be news deprived. That means over half of 16 to 29-year-old fall in this category, so they don't read news anymore. Another point is this rise of social media with non-transparent commercial algorithms. They only work by shortening emotional renouncing differentiation. So this is something which is a specific challenge for public service media. It's a mistake to believe that whoever receives clicks on social media is relevant, but they make the media believe that. Unfortunately, that's their business model. And the delicate questions arise: how should we cooperate with them, or should we differentiate from these global tech giants? Then online journalism is still far too often subject to clickbait. So sensation is rewarded. That's a real problem. Willingness to pay is very low. I mean, that's our own fault, because private media were giving their information for free for a long time. Now everybody is installing paywalls. The concentration of media the development is a problem in Switzerland, especially of national political reporting. It's as well increasing. In the last 2 years, the proportion of shared contribution in German-speaking Switzerland has increased from 10 to 21%, for example. So for the individual reader, it's not really a problem, because they don't really take a notice on this loss of diversity. But from a democratic perspective and a social point of view, this loss is really problematic in the media arena. So if we have insufficient competition in the media market, this produces poor results. And media concentration leads to concentration of power. And the last point I would like to mention are the messaging services. So like WhatsApp, they encourage privatization of the relevant political debates. So these are held on private channels and driven by individual rather than the public interest. So the role of service public media, to conclude, the pillars are democracy, diversity, cohesion of the society, and of course integration. It's also a mandate. They play a crucial role for the whole media ecosystem, as well for formation of journalists, as well for media competencies in the society. And of course, we also have a mandate to be in a constant dialogue with our communities. So what is interesting and what makes us stronger is as well a constant review processes, also on our mission. It's always in the last 5 to 10 years a big discussion on what exactly should be the mission of the service public media. And I think these constant discussions are also an expression of the relevance, importance, the role of public media in society. So, I mean, they really are politically and economically independent. This doesn't exist for other media. We stand for equality, fairness, diversity, as I said, but also exchange between interest groups and of course between minorities and majorities. And yeah, journalistic quality is indispensable. Yeah, we need journalists who really have competences and necessary resources, and who are held to professional standards. And a last point, we did a survey within the SPC. Results are not yet published, but 4,500 people took part and about 700 under 30. And the question was, what are your expectations on service public media? And this is the result, and it's quite a clear result. Yeah, as you can read it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Larissa. There are many questions coming up. This overview really gives us a lot of points for discussion, and I will first give the floor to Joe from Los Angeles.
I wondered about, I guess my question had been about—
I cannot hear you, Joe.
Legal obligation and coverage. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Joe.
Can you hear me?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. I wondered about legal obligations, and if there is a legal obligation, or what the nature of the obligation is to get cover each measure that ends up on the ballot. And if there are some measures which don't ever get covered, that don't really get any media coverage or scrutiny, given the decline in media.
Thank you for this question.
You're on mute.
Okay,
we don't
now
hear
it
anything.
works. Sorry again. Yes, thank you very much, Joe, for this interesting question. Yes, we have a legal obligation to radio and TV law, and they don't really say us how deep and we should cover these political debates, but they give us the quality standards. So by law, we have to be appropriate, by law, we have to be balanced, and by law, we have to be transparent. And if you're not, people can complain. And yeah, we have to argue. So every unit has kind of a, how to say that, ombudswoman, or ombudsman, and is responsible for all the complaints and dealing this. And I have a lot of, I invest a lot of time as well from my time to explain and to argue and to discuss with people if if an article is balanced or not. But we have very, very clear and very high standards by law.
Thank you very much. Now a question from Donald.
Thank you very much, Larissa, for that very good overview of what happens in Switzerland. I'm curious to know to what extent there are any constraints on advertising in Switzerland by political parties or by political groups during referendums or even general elections. I live in Ireland, and only during referendums, the national public service broadcaster must give equal airtime to both sides of the issue, because obviously they come down to yes/no votes, as in all referendums. Also, there are constraints on, for example, posters. I was slightly involved in a campaign in a general election in 2016, where posters were put up advertising, reinstating a direct democracy from which was in our first constitution in the early 20s. The local authority who controls postering of lampposts and things like that took the promoters to court because the promoters of this very limited poster campaign did not give sufficient details of who they were and what they were. In other words, what I understand to be the impressum in Switzerland or in German-speaking Europe. So my real question is, does political advertising have to carry an impressum regardless of what media it's in, whether it's private, public, social, or traditional broadcast and printed?
Do you understand the question?
Can you reformulate?
Yes, I reformulate it a little bit. Donald's question is about political advertisement ahead of popular votes. Is it possible in public media, and where it is possible, does those who are advertising have to say who they are?
Okay, that's an interesting question. No, usually they do not, service public media do not have political advertising. So that's the first point. That's why also why we are independent, probably because I also work for private media, and that's a real problem, because if you're not writing for someone is not thinks we didn't really cover their arguments or their issues very well. They threaten the teams, and yeah, that gives a bias mostly, because of your existence, and you have to reduce the team of journalists if for the next vote they do not add political advertising anymore. You have a problem. So that's really a problem you have to handle every day. So the question for public service media is no, and it's sometimes very hard. The second question part, it's hard to answer you. Sometimes it's very hard to see. It's not very transparent who's behind, but you can find it out. I think if you don't have to put it very I think visible, but you can find it out if you Google and you see who's behind. Usually, you can find the information somewhere.
I mean, in general, one can say that Swiss politics and Swiss democracy is very little regulated when it comes to campaigns. It's very unregulated when it comes to finance. So there is a very few limitations or transparency laws, because the dynamics of Swiss democracy has been quite, let's say, dynamic in one way. On the other way, not so many like backlashes, like maybe in other countries where you are afraid of certain influences. And this the question comes in from Gesa also on the chat. The question about fake news. I mean, especially in the United States, there has been a big debate about that, how fake news influence the domestic discussions. And this is a question to all of you here, maybe who wants to answer about how big is the fear in Switzerland and in Swiss media that fake news are disturbing the domestic debate? And maybe Larissa, you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think we have a few media brands in Switzerland, but which have still a very high credibility. And we have, of course, not. I think you can't compare it with the US, but we have some internet or online platforms. Yeah. But it's Switzerland is very small, and yeah, and everybody knows it's very small, and we know the brands, and it's federalistic, so everyone has more or less a known brand and who can trust it, and where you know who's behind, and I think that makes it easier, a lot easier than in other countries. I wouldn't say, I mean, the fear is here. It was during Corona, it was very, very obvious, because Swiss media has a problem with, how do you say, science journalism, big problems and other problems. And there, the interfering of fake news as well, I know it in the German part as well, from Germany was very high. People were quite insecure about this, and I think the role of the journalists here were to identify these sources, and so journalists and media started to identify these fake news sources, and I think this was a very important part they took and in this role. Just identify and say, hey, if just an example, if we saw something going viral on social media, a video someone's talking, and we saw it's fake news, then we post it and repost it and retweet it and say, hey, it's fake news, and try to give context. So this was part of our work and our research as well.
Renat, yeah.
Thanks. I think there is concern. We should be concerned that there's an annual monitor of, taking the pulse of this young generation, sub 25s, and it shows the latest the issue shows that the trust of this generation, of this age group, that will be the future, the generation that has to make important decisions, for the future of the pension system, for the climate, and the trust in media is declining, and even in quality media, such as SBC and leading newspapers. And yes, there are signs that the trust in the value and the quality of information of the quality media is going down. And of course, this is a huge challenge to reach these people. As Larissa mentioned, there is a huge amount and a rising amount of young people that are news deprived, that they don't read any media. They just inform themselves on Instagram, on TikTok, and these medias, and no radio, no television, no newspapers, no quality online media, and this is getting a problem, especially in Switzerland, where you have to get informed regularly about major issues to vote on. Yeah, this is a huge challenge.
Thank you very much, Renat. We have a question from Frank.
Yes, can you elaborate, please, on how you define the purpose of service public media?
Okay, yeah, interesting question. First of all, it's about values. I think it's about equality. It's about fairness. It's about freedom of speech, and I think that's very, very important. So public service media also enables society to the necessary dialogue which it needs before every votation, for example. Second is everyone needs to be informed. As we have seen, some of these votes are very complex. You need a certain history to understand as well. So I think that's the second point. And a third point is a constant dialogue with the communities as well. As I said, we have an obligation by law to be appropriate, to be balanced, to have an objectivity, I think, which is unique and important. And we need cohesion is well important. We try to keep the society together. These very, very different cultures and parts of Switzerland. We try to keep them together. Inclusion is important of all the minorities. And yeah, these are the main reason. I would define it like this, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, just to add that Switzerland is a very tiny, very small country, but very, very diverse. 4 language cultures, and a lot of, with the migrants brought a lot of diversity. The cantons are very, very diverse till at the mid of the 19th century. There were, their own little states, and now, cohesion isn't really it's not something natural, and the differences between Canton Genf and Canton Appenzell, a rural canton, it's huge, and I think it's one of the SBC is one of the big components, keeping this diversity together, and this is something very, very important.
Thank you very much. I think in a following a follow-up basically of this issue is also a little bit the international role of what you're doing here at Swissinfo. In a way, it's very interesting that I mean, the Swiss Constitution, it's written that Switzerland is obliged to support democracy around the world. And Swissinfo is informing about Swiss democracy in 10 languages and also covering democracy issues, participating in the forum like that. Maybe Larissa, you could share a little bit about the thoughts, about the strategy or the job Swissinfo have when it comes to democracy.
International. Thank you, Bruno. Yes, as we have as we're covering, I say Swiss issues in 10 languages. I think what's important for us that we track down international developments. We monitor international developments, and what we are trying to do is we try to give a Swiss perspective, so that people on site somewhere on a specific issue can classify for themselves and probably can compare with another perspective or approach their own development they're in their region, in their country, whatever. So I think that's the main point. The second point is that it's important to have an intercultural debate and to enable an intercultural debate on different important trends, issues, and decisions, but also crises wherever. And something I think which is really unique and a privilege as well, and a potential we have is we can bring, with our 10 languages, we can bring news and information in a lot of regions where press freedom is limited or cannot be lived, like for example in Switzerland. And I think this is something important for us, and there we also can play an important and crucial role.
Mm-hmm. And also when you tell that, I mean, with these 10 languages, there are journalists producing materials in 10 languages, and you're leading this you can say this channel in 10 languages. Can you give us a little bit of an insight how it is to work with 10 languages where probably there's no common language? So how do you deal with producing good journalism in that way?
Yes, that's a challenge for quality management and for the editors. That's very true. I mean, there is a certain complexity in production in-house. That's clear. I mean, so we have not only a 2 or a 4 eyes principles, or probably then a 6 eyes principle. You always have to want someone from the mother tongue, from the own language. Discussing and coaching and accompanying journalists, but also from the topic side and the expertise side. I mean, we are organized. We try to organize us around the topics and to have cross-cultural perspectives on these different issues and research and questions we think are relevant not only for Switzerland, and also for example, so we are all here, people always have spoken here, we are in the democracy beat, and we try to gather their different perspectives. Urs, who's working mainly at the Bundeshaus, Federal Palace. We have someone from Foreign Affairs in this beat. We have someone who is a specialist for economics, business issues. We have Renat, who has a network in Switzerland and is linked with a lot of experts here. So I think these different perspectives and the cross-cultural perspectives, as well as working on with different languages on one subject, yeah, can helps us a lot to go deeper and to be more in depth. But yeah, Bruno, I could talk a lot about processes and within SwissInfo, but the quality is a challenge, and of course we also adapt. We do a lot of cultural adaptation.
So thank you very much. So maybe to conclude also, SwissInfo is a partner of the Global Forum on Modern Direct Democracy, which will take place next spring here in Bern. We hope, of course, most people will be able to attend, but we will also try to have it both online and on-site. And SwissInfo is a partner. What is the thinking behind that, to be a partner of a forum like that, Marisa?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Bruno. I mean, we're probably interested as well in explaining how democracy works, and what we are able. I mean, we are able to have an international network and international contacts as well via our partners, and that's very important. They also help us to get some visibility, and yeah, I think we need these international discussions, dialogue, and connections to do our work. If not, we are not relevant anymore. So I think partnerships enable us to do our work as the Global Forum. That's crucial for us.
Thank you very much. And this brings us basically to the end of this a very interesting session here from Swissinfo in Bern. As Larissa said, with being relevant to the world and to readers, listeners, watchers is of course a very important feature. And that's also the reason why we want to conclude by just briefing you on how you can follow the votes and the voting counts this Sunday. Urs, you can briefly inform us about that.
Thank you, Bruno. I have an invitation for you and a warning. Now, I'll give you the invitation first and the warning second. The invitation is follow us on one of the 10 language sites of Swissinfo in Chinese, in Arabic, French, Spanish, or not least, of course, English. You can start following our live coverage at midday Sunday. That's when polls close. But of course, we have articles on our site before 12 o'clock explaining what it's all about. Which brings me to the warning. It might take a while before you get final results on Sunday. This is, and I'll come back to a point I made at the very, very beginning, there's simply an awful lot of ballots going on at a national, local, or regional level. So be patient with us. We provide you with results. We provide you with reaction. We provide you with analysis, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Urs. Thank you very much, Renat. Thank you very much, Larissa. This brings us to the end of this session. And thank you to everybody of you to following, putting questions, watching. I give back to Daniela.
Yes, thank you everyone for taking part in this really interesting session. Just some practical information from our side. We will not be closing the Zoom room. The session is closed, but the next session will begin in just 30 minutes at 16 o'clock Central European time. So you can stay here, you can take a coffee break, or you can log out and log back in, but we will be meeting again at this link. So we hope we see you for the next session. It will be about complementary paths to combating climate change. Thank you again to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.